So I decided to surprise my wife Jessica while she was on a business trip, but instead, I ended up catching her in the act with a coworker. Let me give you the full scoop. Our alarm went off at 6 a.m., like it does every morning. Neither of us really wanted to get out of bed, but we had to. As the morning sunlight peeked through our curtains, I groaned, feeling dead tired. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and planted my feet on the floor. Why do you sound so old? Jessica teased as she headed to the bathroom. After last night, I feel like I am, I joked back, reminiscing about how fun our evening was. She always had a knack for making things exciting, but today marked the start of her trip, which meant I was flying solo for a week. I wasn't thrilled about it. I heard the shower running and contemplated joining her, but passed on the idea. I was still groggy from last night and needed a bit more time to wake up. Jessica came back full of energy, making my sluggish pace seem even slower. Get up, lazy bones. We've got bills to pay, she said, giving me a playful shove. Okay, I'm up, I replied, dragging myself to the bathroom for a wake-up splash. After getting ready, we had breakfast together, before splitting up for the day. Jessica heading to the airport and me to my job. We both work at a manufacturing company in St. Louis. Jessica is a hotshot lawyer specializing in negotiations, often jetting off for work, like this trip to Denver to hammer out a deal with some aerospace company. These trips happen a few times a year, each lasting about a week. Jessica, at 35, finished law school 12 years ago and stands out at 5'4", weighing around 125 pounds, with a figure that turns heads. She charmed me right from the start. I'm John Baker, a 37-year-old engineer at the same company. I'm 6'1" and try to stay fit with regular workouts. We both love golf and often play with friends. Our love story kicked off at a company picnic, and it was love at first sight for me. 6 months later, we were married. Now, 7 years in, we just bought our dream house, planning to start a family soon. Jessica aims to be a stay-at-home mom, a dream backed by her parents living nearby. She's even planning to stop her birth control after this trip. This morning, after breakfast, I helped her pack the car and kissed her goodbye, noticing tears in her eyes as she got into the driver's seat. I hope we won't have to say goodbye like this much longer, I said, hopeful for our future together. I can't wait for these trips to stop, she admitted, hating these farewells. I dread them as much as you do, I comforted her. Let's make Friday night easy with some takeout so you can relax. That sounds perfect. See you then, she said before driving off. I watched her car disappear from sight, then went back inside to get ready for work. At the office, I grabbed a coffee and headed straight to my desk. My phone rang almost immediately. This is Baker, I answered. Hey, John, can you come to my office? My boss Hubert asked. Of course, I'm on my way, I replied, taking my coffee with me. Hubert invited me to sit down when I arrived. He said, John, there's an opportunity you might find interesting. Since Jessica is away, I thought of you. Our technician in California, Gerald Carter, is sick and can't handle an issue with a client in San Jose. Given your expertise with the equipment, would you consider flying out to resolve it? Sure, I don't have much going on here, and with Jessica away, I'm available. How soon do they need me? I asked. Immediately, he replied. Lucy will sort out your travel plans. Please inform the client about your visit and discuss the issue in detail. Okay, I'm on it now, I said, feeling a surge of excitement about the trip. I planned to pack at home and catch a flight that afternoon so I could be at the client's first thing tomorrow. All right, have a good trip, Hubert said, wrapping up our conversation. I stopped by Lucy's desk to sort out my travel plans, then called the client to get more details. After that, I headed home to pack. Driving home, a spontaneous idea popped into my head. If I finished my work early, I could surprise Jessica in Denver. The thought of showing up unannounced made me even more pumped for the trip. At the airport, while waiting for my flight, I tried reaching Jessica, but she didn't pick up. I left her a message saying I'd be at my parents' place for a few days and that she could call my cell in the evenings. Everything went smoothly. By Tuesday afternoon, The client's issue was resolved, and their equipment was up and running perfectly. I quickly booked a flight to Denver, planning to arrive around 9 p.m. Mountain Time. After checking out of my hotel in San Jose, I headed to the airport, had dinner, and then got on my flight. During dinner, Jessica called, and we talked briefly. She asked about my parents, and I played along, pretending I was with them. She mentioned that the negotiations were moving forward, but that she was exhausted and planned to relax in her hotel room that evening. We exchanged I love yous and hung up. I landed in Denver around 9:45 p.m. and took a cab to Jessica's fancy hotel. The staff verified who I was and gave me a keycard to her suite. Entering quietly, I saw a lamp on over the desk with her laptop shut, but Jessica was nowhere to be seen. I put down my suitcase and checked the bedroom and bathroom, but both were empty. Puzzled, I wondered if she hadn't returned yet. Should I wait in the room or look for her in the hotel lounge? Then I noticed the door to the adjoining suite was slightly open. Intrigued, I pushed it open without making a sound. The living room next door was empty too, but then I heard a noise from the bedroom that made my stomach drop. Sure, here's a more casual and detailed version of the text. My stomach churned and I started to break out in a cold sweat as I quietly moved closer to the bedroom door. Peeking into the dimly lit room, my breath caught in my throat. There was Jessica, completely naked, and some random guy I didn't recognize lying on the bed, his face turned away. My first instinct was to storm in there, let Jessica have it, and rip the guy to shreds. But somehow, I managed to keep my cool and step back into Jessica's suite. I grabbed my digital camera, the one I brought to snap pics on our trip, and adjusted the settings for low light, turning off the flash. I tiptoed back to the bedroom door and quietly snapped several photos of their little scene, making sure not to get caught. They were so wrapped up in each other that they didn't even notice me standing there, capturing their betrayal. Before leaving Jessica's suite, I rummaged through her open briefcase on the table and found a business card from David Price, the lead negotiator at our company. Figuring it might come in handy, I pocketed the card. Back in her room, I hooked up my camera to her laptop, using the interface cable I always carry around. Our laptops use the same photo software, so transferring the pictures was a breeze. I made the most incriminating photo, the background image on her laptop, packed up my camera, and slipped out of her room, trying to hold back the tears. I walked to the elevator, feeling the heavy weight of her betrayal, just crushing me. I handed the room key back to the front desk and immediately called the airline, desperate for the earliest flight back to St. Louis. Luckily, there was a 6:30 a.m. flight that would get me home by 9:30 a.m. I figured that would be right around when Jessica usually starts her day by turning on her laptop at the negotiation table. That's when she'd realized she was caught, marking the end of our marriage. I headed back to the airport and checked into a nearby motel. Sleep was impossible. I just kept replaying those awful images from Jessica's room in my head, letting the tears flow. By 5 a.m., I had no tears left and was dead set on ending our marriage quickly. Back in St. Louis, my cell phone started ringing the second I got in my car. Seeing Jessica's name, I ignored it and turned off my phone. When I got home, she had already started calling the house phone. Her message went to voicemail. "John, you need to call me back as soon as you can. It's really important." Ignoring her frantic message, I changed clothes and headed out to get a U-Haul truck. Once back, I started packing up all my stuff, planning to be out before Jessica got home around 4 p.m. In a few hours, I managed to move everything into a storage unit I had already rented. I had made an appointment with our lawyer to discuss divorce beforehand, so once the move was done, I headed straight to the lawyer's office. Though tempted to use her cheating as the reason for the divorce, I opted for irreconcilable differences, keeping her infidelity as a backup if things got nasty. I also told the lawyer to change my will, making my brother the sole beneficiary. Then I went to the bank to move half of our shared savings and checking accounts into new ones in my name alone. I did the same with our investment accounts through my advisor. Feeling sad but determined, I drove to my parents' house with my suitcase. My mom was shocked to see me. "John, what's going on?" she asked. "Jessica's been calling nonstop looking for you. Did you say you'd be here?" I sat down with my retired dad and spilled everything. They were in disbelief about Jessica's cheating and our impending divorce. I asked if I could stay with them until I found a new place with furniture, and they agreed without hesitation. My gut feeling was right because around 6 p.m., just as we were about to have dinner, the doorbell rang. Dad answered it and came back with a very upset-looking Jessica. "John, why haven't you been answering my calls? I need to talk to you. All your stuff is gone from our house." Her voice shook with emotion. I calmly replied, "I thought the note I left on your computer would explain everything." "Oh, God, I was scared it was you who left that note. Can we please talk somewhere, honey?" she begged. "Jessica, I'm not your honey anymore. There's nothing left for us to talk about. I've started divorce proceedings, and our lawyers can handle any communication. Seeing what you did in Denver destroyed any feelings I had for you," I said firmly. "You'd better let David, your boyfriend, know that I'll be coming for him next. I wonder what his wife will think." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Oh my God, can't we just talk about this, John? Please," she implored. "Just leave, Jessica. You're making my dinner go cold," I insisted. "But here's a thought. Why don't you write me a detailed letter explaining why you thought it was okay to break our marriage vows? I'm sure a lawyer as clever as you could come up with a convincing argument that it was all my fault, while claiming you still love and respect me." With tears streaming down her face, Jessica turned to leave but looked back one last time. "Please, John, reconsider ending our marriage without us having a real discussion." "Goodbye, Jessica," I said firmly. After she left, my parents sat in stunned silence, shocked by everything that had just transpired. "So, John, our talk was pretty rough, huh?" My mom chimed in, saying, "Hey, that was harsh, John." I shot back, "Mom, do you want to see some pictures of her with another guy? Now that's what you call harsh reality. She's completely disrespected me, and I can't just let that slide. There's no way I can trust her again. Do you really want me to have kids with someone like that?" My dad, after a pause, said, "I get it, son. Maybe once things calm down, you'll see things differently." I wasn't having it. "I don't think so, Dad. Can we just talk about something else and finish dinner?" I was desperate to move on. "Sure, son," Dad replied, though I could tell he wasn't too happy about it. That Monday morning was a mixed bag of emotions. I was sad about leaving John, but super excited about our plans to start a family. We'd been really patient, making sure we were financially stable and doing well in our careers before taking this big step. It felt like the timing was finally right. The flight to Denver went smoothly. I ended up sitting next to David Price, our chief negotiator. We chatted a bit about work before moving to more personal topics, like our families. David knew I planned to leave my job once I got pregnant. He mentioned how much he'd miss working with me, which was sweet. David's been in the game for a long time. Married for 20 years with teenagers, he's been my partner in negotiations for ages. We have a great work rhythm and both know each other pretty well. The rest of our team was sitting behind us, involved in their own conversations. When we got to the Denver hotel, our rooms were conveniently next to each other. This setup was originally for late-night work discussions, but about 10 years ago, our relationship shifted. We began seeing our time together as a way to unwind from work stress. We used to tell ourselves it wasn't really cheating, since it helped us work better. Sometimes we'd even joke about it. After I got married to John, guilt started creeping in, and I called it off with David. But during a particularly tough negotiation, David suggested we pick up where we left off to ease the stress. Reluctantly, I agreed, and found myself slipping back into the affair. Strangely, the excitement of it made things at home with John feel more thrilling, which helped me feel less guilty. On this trip, I didn't meet up with David on the first night because I was exhausted. But after a tough day of negotiations, I decided to see him. I have no idea how John found out or got that picture, but I was utterly shocked to see it on my laptop the next morning. David, sitting beside me, quickly shut my laptop and asked for a break in the negotiations. We stepped into the hallway, and he was visibly upset. "Why is there a picture like that on your laptop?" he asked. I was still in shock. "I don't know, David. That wasn't there the last time I used it." He suggested we take another look. We opened the laptop again and scrutinized the image. "Oh no! That's you," he said. I was confused. "Me? How could it be?" I was stumped. "I'm not sure, but that's definitely you. And the person with you looks like it could be me, even though you can't see my face. Did you leave your laptop somewhere?" "No, it was with me the whole trip, either in my room or yours. I can't imagine how someone could have taken that photo," I replied. "The door was shut, so I thought it was locked. You've got to go back to the hotel and see if they let anyone into your room last night. I'll stay here and hold down the fort. Try to get in touch with John to see where he was last night." I doubted John was behind this. "It's impossible. I talked to him while he was at his parents' place." "Did you call their landline?" "No, he told me to use his cell phone." "That's concerning. He could have been anywhere when you called. Hit me up on my cell if you learn anything." "Got it. See you." I was drenched in sweat. If John put that photo on my laptop, it was a clear sign we were over. I rushed back to the hotel to unravel the mystery. At the reception, I found out a Mr. John Baker had been given a key to my room at 9:45 p.m. and returned it 30 minutes later. That's when it hit me hard. My marriage was likely over. The man I loved more than anything was gone, but I was determined to try and win him back. I went up to my room and tried calling John's cell and his office, leaving voicemails everywhere. His secretary mentioned he was on a business trip in California back the next day. I called his parents, who hadn't seen him in days, and asked them to tell him to call me as soon as they heard from him. I also left a message at our house, hoping he'd call back. Sitting alone, I couldn't stop crying. With no other options, I booked the next flight back to St. Louis. I called David to update him. After a pause, he said, "Jessica, we might both be facing divorces, or something even worse." I was stunned. Worse than divorce? What could that be? "Our company has strict rules against dating among managers. If this gets out, we could both lose our jobs. It wouldn't be good for either of our careers." I hadn't thought about that. Losing John already felt world-ending. Losing my job too would be too much. But right now, I needed to get back to St. Louis and talk to John. Maybe there was a chance to fix things. I had a flight at noon and would be in St. Louis by 4:30. I had to find him and talk it out. "I'll let you know how it goes. Gotta go now." So, after we said our goodbyes and wrapped up our business talks, I packed my stuff in a hurry and rushed to the lobby to check out. I hopped into the hotel's limo and headed straight to the airport. On the flight back to St. Louis, I couldn't think about anything else but just hoping I could get John to sit down and talk with me. I really needed to explain that what happened was purely physical. It didn't mean anything emotionally. I was praying he'd see my cheating as a one-time thing with no feelings attached. When I got home, everything seemed pretty normal at first. But then I stepped into our bedroom and noticed all his clothes and stuff were gone. That's when it hit me. He knew, and he had left. I felt a rising panic as I tried calling him over and over, but no luck. So I decided to head over to his parents' place, hoping to either find him or at least get some info. Seeing him there was brutal. He was so cold and distant, it made me feel like crap. Straight up, John told me he was going to divorce me and didn't give a damn about what I had to say. Nothing was going to change his mind. When he suggested I write a letter explaining my side, it felt like he was just twisting the knife deeper. I couldn't hold it together. I had to leave and cry in my car. Our future, all those plans of having a family, growing old together, enjoying grandkids, it was all crumbling before my eyes. And selfishly, a part of me was freaking out about the clock ticking on my chances to have kids if I ever found someone new. Eventually, I pulled myself together enough to start the car and drive back to what now felt like an empty, hollow house. I was absolutely overwhelmed with a deep sense of loss and uncertainty about what would come next. Meanwhile, John's side of the story picks up after a restless night filled with haunting images of Jessica and David together. Early in the morning, he went downstairs in his parents' house to make some coffee. Feeling down, he grabbed his laptop and camera to go through the photos. He was fixated on finding David in those snapshots. As he looked through, he couldn't see David's face clearly at first, but eventually, he spotted something on David's right arm. Zooming in, he saw a heart tattoo with J8 inside it, David's wife Janie's nickname. With this proof in hand, John went back upstairs, took a shower, and got ready for work. By the time he came back down, his mom was busy making breakfast. At work, he immediately made a few CDs with the incriminating photos and printed out several copies, putting everything neatly into a folder. Determined, he went straight to HR to talk to the manager, Chad. They knew each other from working at the same small company and had even played golf together once. John laid out the photos in front of Chad, who looked both curious and amused. "What's this, John? 30 pictures?" "Sorry, Chad. It looks bad, but that's my wife and David Price. These photos were taken on Tuesday night in David's hotel room in Denver during a business trip for our company." "Oh no, John, that's tough to hear. What's your plan? You could fire them both for breaking the no dating rule in their job contracts." "We've never actually done that before, though." "Are you sure you want to go through with it? It'll make the affair public." "Are you thinking of divorcing Jessica?" "I've already told my lawyer to start working on the divorce papers, but if the company doesn't do anything, I'll have to sue." "All right, John, I'll talk to our legal team and get things started." Afterward, John went to tell his boss Hubert about what was happening. Hubert was really surprised and concerned when he heard about John's wife and David Price. John asked for the rest of the week off, and Hubert agreed without hesitation. Before they parted ways, Hubert praised John for his work on a recent trip to California, mentioning the possibility of John taking over the area because the current engineer was retiring for health reasons. John said he'd think about it and let Hubert know his decision next week. As John was leaving Hubert's office, his secretary Lucy stopped him. "John, your wife came by looking for you. She said she'd come back later." "Lucy, I don't want to see my wife at all. Please tell her that if she comes back." "Oh, John, I'm so sorry. I didn't know there was a problem." "There's a big problem, Lucy. We're getting a divorce. She and David Price have been cheating." John figured everyone at work would know by lunchtime, given Lucy's love for chatting. After that, John called David's wife Janet. They had seen each other at work events, but this conversation was going to be tough. "Janet, it's John Baker. How are you?" "I'm okay, John. David said you might call but didn't say why." "Janet, we need to talk. Is now a good time?" "Sure, John. I have to go to the hairdresser at 1, but I'm free now. You know where I live, right?" "Yes, I do. I'll be there in 15 minutes." When John arrived, he was nervous but determined. He couldn't let David get off easy and leave Jessica to deal with everything alone. "Hi, John. Come in. Do you want some coffee? I just made it," Janet said, welcoming him and pointing to the living room. "Sure thing, Janet. Just plain black, please," he replied. After a short while, she came back with the coffee and sat across from him. "So, what's up?" she asked. John took a deep breath. "Janet, I saw your husband and my wife together in Denver. I'm divorcing Jessica and getting them both fired from their jobs. I hate being the one to break this to you, but it's going public soon, and I wanted to give you a heads up. I have photos if you need proof." Janet seemed surprisingly composed. "John, I've had suspicions about David's behavior on his business trips for a while now, though I hope they weren't true," she admitted. "David has always been a loving husband. So, Dad and I really didn't want to think about it, but I knew their affair would come out eventually. And now, here we are. I'm super sorry about what's going on with your marriage, and honestly, it sucks for me too. I'm worried about David, you know? He's at that age where finding another job with the same pay is going to be really tough. Now I gotta figure out my next steps. Do you want a copy of the pictures I have?" I asked. "Yeah, please leave them. I'll muster up the courage to look at them," Janet replied quietly. "I'm really sorry, Janet. I just couldn't ignore this. Jessica and I were close to starting a family, but I can't see a future with someone I can't trust or respect. The mother of our kids needs both of those things," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the sadness. I get it, John. Thanks for being honest with me. I'd rather hear it from you first. And I want to say again how sorry I am about Jessica. I'm sure she feels awful too. And David will when he finds out I know about their affair. I just wish it was a one-time thing. It would be easier to forgive. But it's been happening for years, and that's hard to swallow. Now that it's out there, I've got my pride and need to keep my head up, Janet said, sounding both sad and determined. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know, I offered genuinely as I got ready to head back to my parents' place. Epilogue. It's been 6 months since I started the divorce process. This morning, I got the final papers officially ending my marriage to Jessica. I hadn't talked to her or seen her since she came to my parents' place that day. My lawyer handled everything. In the divorce deal, I gave up the house with the big mortgage, along with all the furniture and stuff I'd bought on credit, just to cut ties with her completely. I also got my name off the mortgage, so she's on the hook for all the payments. Without my income, she had to sell the house and took a big financial hit. At first, she tried to fight the divorce, but I gave her an ultimatum. Sign the papers in 48 hours, or I'd change the reason for the divorce to cheating and put the pictures of her and David online. Under pressure, she agreed just in time, and that's why I'm a free man now. Seems like she realized she didn't want me that much after all. Even though Jessica lost her job because of all this, she's a smart lawyer and landed a new job within a month. It might not pay as much or have the same perks, but I've heard she's getting by and even started dating again. Good luck to her new boyfriend, whoever he is. I wonder if she's told him about our divorce and why it happened. Maybe I should tell him myself. David's also had a rough time. He got fired and is now struggling financially with alimony and child support. He found a new job, but the salary isn't great. As for me, I've settled in Santa Maria, California, a peaceful coastal town halfway between the Bay Area and LA. It's a nice spot because I can easily get to both northern and southern parts of the state. I moved here about 4 months ago and now live in an apartment building full of singles and young couples, most of whom are saving up to buy a house. The cost of housing here is high, making it tough to get into the market. I've also found a new companion, a woman who lives in the same building. Like me, she's been through a divorce. We've found comfort and compatibility with each other and are taking things slow, seeing if there's a future for us together. Since I travel a lot for work, trust is really important, especially if we ever think about having kids someday. And honestly, the ticking biological clocks remind me that time doesn't wait for anyone. So, I'm thinking about making a move sooner rather than later.